أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة، الحضور الكريم، أهلا وسهلا بكم مجددا. تركز قمة المعرفة 2016 في العديد من جلساتها على المستقبل، طرق استشرافه والاستعداد له معرفيا. وبينما تتشعب المحاور والجوانب التي يناقشها خبراء من شتى أنحاء العالم خلال هذه القمة، فإن هذه الجلسة المتميزة ستأخذنا في رحلة إلى هذا المستقبل الذي نسعى دائما لاستشرافه. دليلنا اليوم في هذه الرحلة، رحلة إلى المستقبل، جيسون سيلفا.
السلام. Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. Our next speaker is someone I'm very excited to present. I'm a huge fan of his work and I've followed him for a few years now. And he's quoted as saying, "My approach to creating content is to pull people out of their intellectual comfort zones. I'm interested in presenting ideas in unique ways that challenge people to question their assumptions." I remember when I was studying in America 3 years ago, on our group, student group, they sent us a video called Existential Bummers. And I remember watching that video. It's a 3-minute video, and he was able to piece together philosophy, science, life, the world around us. And I remember I watched it over and over again, and I just skipped studying for my exams. I then showed it to my wife. I then brought my kid up to watch it too. And we just sat there and went through his videos. And you know, they talk about influencers today and the stuff we see online, but I believe that the true influencers don't only change the way we see the world, they change the way we see ourselves and our place in the world. Our next speaker is someone who has influenced millions around the world with his YouTube series, Shots of Awe. He's a presenter of the hit show Brain Games. Please join me in giving a huge Dubai welcome to Jason Silva.
Please welcome on the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Salam alaikum Dubai. How's it going, everybody? Thank you for having me. It's really a thrill to be back at the Knowledge Summit, because the search for knowledge, the acquisition of knowledge, defines the human condition. Human beings are curious like no other species on earth, and it is our curiosity that is responsible for our triumph over so many of our boundaries and limitations. And I think that a place like Dubai really embodies that transcendence of limitations and overcoming of boundaries. So it's really a thrill to be back here in this wonderful, wonderful place. So thank you. The astronomer Carl Sagan had a fantastic quote. And this is a quote that has inspired me like no other. He says, "Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known," right? And it really sums up our thirst, our hunger, our curiosity for knowledge. The fact that somewhere, something beyond, something incredible is just waiting to be known. And he also used to say that understanding is a kind of ecstasy, that when we finally make sense of things, it feels really, really good. It's almost as if human beings are designed to make sense of things. So I'm incredibly passionate for imagination. I'm incredibly passionate about innovation and the human capacity to overcome our boundaries. And this has led to a passion for technology, because I believe that technology is the embodiment of human imagination. I believe that technology is the literalization of human creativity in the world, right? Technology is the human mind turned inside out. Technology is how we extend our limits. In fact, the cognitive philosophers David Chalmers and Andy Clark describe technology as a kind of scaffolding for our minds that extends our thoughts, our reach, and our vision. Technology is the exoskeleton of the human being. Technology is our extended phenotype. Technology is who we are. And this has always been so. This is what it means to be human. 100,000 years ago, when early humans were crawling the savannas of Africa and we first picked up a stick on the ground and we used that stick, that branch, to reach a fruit on a really high tree. We've been using our tools, our instruments, to extend our reach, to extend our will, to extend our agency, right? As the philosopher Marshall McLuhan used to say, we build the tools, and then those tools build us by redefining our boundaries, by extending our limits. Now, today, obviously, we live in an age of rapid change. We live in an age of transformation. We live in an age of disruption. And most of us sometimes struggle to keep up with such rapid change, to make sense of what's happening. There's a feeling that technology is moving so fast that it's pulling the rug from underneath our feet. And it's kind of a strange feeling. And the reason for this is that our brains evolved in a world that was linear and that was local. And we don't live in that kind of world anymore. 100,000 years ago, yes, there was technological change over time, but it happened over many, many generations. It accrued slowly at first, and so the world didn't really change within our own lifespans. Today, it's very, very different. Today, we can feel the change happen in 5 to 10 years. We can see the world changing very rapidly, and this is due to the exponential nature of technological progress. And again, the word exponential is a tricky one because our intuition is linear. Our instinct about change is linear. But we continue to see the effects of exponential change all the time, yet we lack the intuition to understand why this is happening. So again, I talked a little bit about this last year, but this is key to understanding why the world is changing so much and to better prepare to leverage these changes to impact the world in a positive way, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Now, let's begin. Ray Kurzweil, he's a very, very famous futurist. He's the head of engineering at Google. He uses a wonderful example to very quickly illustrate the difference between linear change and exponential change, something that's very necessary, again, to make sure that we're interpreting these changes with the right context. So he says, if you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where do those 30 linear steps take you? Those 30 steps take you to 30. 30 linear steps gets you to 30. But take the same amount of steps exponentially. The same 30 steps, but doing them exponentially would go 2, 4, 16, and by step 30, where are you? You're actually at 1 billion. So 30 linear steps gets you to 30. 30 exponential steps gets you to 1 billion. That's exponential progress. And that kind of exponential progress is the reason why the smartphone that we carry in our pockets today is 1 million times cheaper, 1 million times smaller, yet 1,000 times more powerful than a supercomputer that used to occupy half a building 40 years ago. So think about that for a second. The tool you have in your pocket today is 1 million times cheaper, 1 million times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than a supercomputer that occupied half a building in size 40 years ago. I mean, this is how you start to make sense of the kind of progress that human beings are capable of the kind of progress we've already achieved. There's so much doom and gloom in the media. There's so much fear-mongering in our filter bubbles and echo chambers on Facebook, when in fact, the kind of progress that we have achieved in the last 40 years, for me, is evidence that we are capable of wonders, that we contain wonders, and that if used in the right way, we can use these tools to impact the world and address the grand challenges of humanity. We shall overcome. We can do this. Now, I've hosted the show Brain Games for 5 seasons on the National Geographic Channel. I've been creating this video series, Shots of Awe, because I'm obsessed with disseminating a message of optimism, to spread knowledge, curiosity, and wonder about what human beings are capable of when they have the right lens, right? When they probe the adjacent possible, which author Stephen Johnson describes as a shadow from the future that hovers over the present and provides a map of all the ways in which the present might reinvent itself. So we have to see the world through that lens, through that adjacent possible. So I want to show you some of the videos that I've been creating in this space to really kind of send that message home, this message of optimism and knowledge in the face of challenge, in the face of obstacle. You know, I do a lot of these talks around the world. People say, oh, I'm afraid of disruption, right? The world is changing too fast. But really, this exponential disruption, when seen the right way, is an exponential opportunity. It's an opportunity we've never had before to really make this a better world. But really it starts with redefining what it means to be a human being, with realizing that to be human is to be transhuman, because we transcend our boundaries. And our tools, again, are extensions of our minds. And so this is the kind of lens, the attitude with which we have to see technology and innovation. Something that I see in Dubai pretty much like in no other place on earth, which is such a thrill to be here. So my friends, I would like to show the first video. It's called "To be Human is to be Transhuman."
So there's a great line by Shakespeare in which he says, "We know what we are, we know not what we may be." And in the age of accelerating technologies in which we extend the cognitive reach of our minds, the perimeters of our humanness with these extensions of self, these exoskeletons, these technological scaffoldings, you know, the wings of our aircrafts and the signals traveling through our smartphones, sending our thoughts electrified at the speed of light across oceans of sky. We redefine and extend what it means to be human. Edward O. Wilson says, we have actually decommissioned natural selection, and now we must look deep within ourselves and decide what we wish to become. We are now the chief agents of evolution. We have reversed engineered the software of biology and are about to rewire and upgrade and redefine what it is to be a Homo sapien. Juan Enriquez uses the term Homo evolutus, the being that evolves itself, that transforms itself, right? Ray Kurzweil, we didn't stay in the caves. We haven't stayed on the planet. Biology, just another membrane to be transcended. You know, Marvin Minsky used to say, will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children. You know, I love this idea because we hear the term transhumanism, and what it means to be human is to be transhuman. We are the species that transforms and transcends. We never stopped. We always did. It's what we are.
So again, the idea is to become excited and to transcend the been there's and done that's of the adult mind, to dissolve those boundaries in our thinking that often get in the way of accepting the inevitable transformations that are coming. So optimism is very important, right? Reality is coupled to perception. So my goal is for people to perceive these changes through a positive light, through an optimistic lens, right? Through an exciting reality tunnel. So I travel around the world, I talk about exponential change, I give this example of the smartphone in our pockets, and people are like, okay, I get that because I've seen that. Information technology changes exponentially. There's evidence for it because we can see it. So people don't usually argue that point. But people will sometimes ask me, okay, you know, computers, digital technologies are advancing at this exponential speed, but what about the world of the flesh and the world of concrete, right? The world, the physical world in which we live and the software of biology within that we inhabit. Well, it turns out, and you saw the previous session, Daniel Kraft and others talk about this, it turns out that biology is now also becoming an information technology. And so as biology has become an information technology, it is subject to the same exponential progress that all information technologies are subject to. So With biology, the term that's used nowadays as we learn to manipulate the software of biology is biotechnology. Biotechnology means mastering the information processes of biology, because biology is information. Our genes are little software programs. We are linguistic all the way down. We are made of language. DNA is code. Think about the miracle that is each and every one of us, and that we are made of software, and that this software can now be understood, can now be reprogrammed, so that we can reprogram our genes away from disease, away even from aging. The eminent physicist Freeman Dyson talks about a very near future where a new generation of artists will be writing genomes the way the poets used to write verses. Think about this for a second. Writing genomes, writing with biology the way we used to write poetry. So biology becomes the new canvas for our artistry. Biology, synthetic biology, becomes the new workspace for the artist and for the engineer to create miracles, to cure illnesses. There's a reason why Google co-founder Larry Page invested over $100 million into Calico, a company called the California Life Extension Company, a software company for biology that had a Time magazine cover story called Google and the End of Death. And the idea was that as we are able to systematically repair our DNA, human beings might double or triple their lifespans. We've already doubled the human lifespans just with basic science, just with antibiotics, just with taking better care of ourselves. Life expectancy used to be 40, now it's pushing 85. Imagine when we can play with the knobs and levers of our DNA. The age of personalized medicine, right? Not trial and error, but something customized for your genome to fix your particular affliction. We could engineer the end of suffering. We could be engineers of paradise, a world without suffering. Think about that. Gene sequencing, the speed at which we can sequence our genomes, is advancing 3 times faster than exponential. It's going 3 times faster than those examples I was giving you before about our smartphones over the past 40 years. So that means that in the next 25 years, we are really going to have apps for biology, software patches for ourselves. This is coming extremely, extremely fast, and the opportunities, I think, are limitless. Again, if we leverage the right attitude, right? It's all about how we use these technologies. You also have exponential advances in nanotechnology. I heard the previous session was talking about femtoscale density manipulation, right? When we can manipulate atoms, the building blocks of the physical world, and pattern those atoms using software, the same way we can pattern bits of ones and zeros in digital technology, then the physical world becomes a programmable medium, just like software. So think about that. With ones and zeros, which is what digital tech is, we can make all the rich digital universes that we've seen transform our world. When we can manipulate the building blocks of physics, atoms, the same way we manipulate those ones and zeros, then what we can do to the physical world becomes equal to what we can do in digital space. Imagine buildings that assemble themselves. Imagine the next largest building in the world in Dubai that builds itself. Software that writes its own hardware. Nanotechnology already exists in nature. What is a seed? When you plant a seed from a fruit, you put it in the soil, it's a software file that tells the matter around it to grow into a tree. That's nanotechnology, software that writes its own hardware in the world. And nanotechnology is also advancing exponentially. The most famous book on nanotechnology, written by Eric Drexler, it's called Engines of Creation. Human beings are now the pilots of the engines of creation. That's nanotechnology. And then, of course, you have continuing advances in digital technology, artificial intelligence, the creation of non-biological intelligence that can further augment, extend, and uplift the human condition by helping us solve problems that we alone cannot solve. And some people worry about artificial intelligence because they think, of course, that it's artificial and somehow unnatural. But the truth is, it's all intelligence. Whether it's biological or non-biological, all of it works together through a series of interacting feedback loops. Just like when you write something on a piece of paper, part of your thinking is occurring on the page. And then you read what you wrote and it goes back into your brain. Feedback loops. It's the same thing with our digital technologies. You send a message to somebody, part of your thinking is going from biological to non-biological, and then into the other person's mind it becomes biological again. Feedback loops between humans and technology. All of it is intelligence. This distinction of artificial and non-artificial intelligence, false duality. It's all intelligence. It's all part of this larger system, this global brain that we are creating to help us address the grand challenges of humanity. So these three overlapping revolutions, GNR, genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, are the three forces to lead towards a potential technological transformation of the human experience, what in Silicon Valley they love to call the singularity. The singularity is the moment when we transcend biology. We can fix the errors in biology. It's a very exciting time to address what it means to be human, to decide, right, what we're going to do with these powers. Because again, with great powers comes great responsibility. Cannot emphasize this enough. Technology is a double-edged sword. Fire, perhaps the first technology we domesticated, could cook our food and transform our world, or it can burn our villages. So it's all about how we use these technologies. The alphabet, which we use to communicate, write poetry, share knowledge, the alphabet can also be used to spread hate. We see that on the internet. So it's all about how we use these technologies. Biotech and nanotech and artificial intelligence is no different than fire or the alphabet. We have to use these tools in the right way. So the next video I want to show you tells the story of biotechnology, of how the software of biology is coming under human control to fix and cure disease. Please show the second video.
Extremely excited at the prospects of biotechnology. Ray Kurzweil defines biotechnology as mastering the information processes of biology. Literally understanding that biology is software. Our genes are little software programs. And increasingly, as biology comes under the mastering of mind, of agency, humanity will be able to weave worlds of meaning into being with biology. You see, with biology, we're talking about software that writes its own hardware. Sequencing today is going 3 times faster than Moore's Law, 3 times faster than exponential. So consider the new kinds of artistry that will come when the canvas for human intelligence, for human creativity, is biology itself. When life itself is the medium through which our genius expresses itself. This is very meta and recursive because it's like mind emerged from flesh, and then mind is now affecting the software of flesh. I mean, Freeman Dyson, the poet, says in the near future, a new generation of artists are going to write genomes with the fluency that Blake and Byron wrote verses. Love that line, because think about it. We're going to write poetry out of life. We're going to heal every disease. We're going to upgrade ourselves. We're going to reverse engineer the aging process. We're going to transcend the biological straitjacket that currently limits us.
So again, I'm very excited about how we're going to use these technologies to overcome our limits. That much is obvious, but I still receive sometimes concern, and I understand this concern from audiences who worry about too much intervention. Are we overstepping ourselves here? Are we tinkering with the natural order? These are legitimate concerns, right? These are not concerns that should frighten us from embracing these technologies, because fear never gets us anywhere. These are concerns that should raise the conversation, that should create forums like this to talk about the implications of what's the right way to use these tools, again. And one of the key things that people say is, well, is technology unnatural? And to this, I think the most illuminating thing that I've come across is that increasingly these advanced man-made technological systems like the internet are starting to mirror or reflect patterns that we find in natural systems, in the natural world. So for example, the neurons in our brain are organized very similarly to the way the internet is organized. And it's not that when the people made the internet, they were like, let's make this the way the neurons are organized. No, this is just further evidence that systems in nature and systems of technology are all cybernetics, right? They're all cybernetic feedback loop systems. Like nature and tech share these characteristics. Cities are like organisms. Cities have metabolic rates. So increasingly, this duality of nature and tech starts to dissolve, and what we start to see is that all of it is just complexity emerging. Buckminster Fuller, the wonderful architect and philosopher, used to say that life, by definition, is anti-entropic. So in the universe, we have the second law of thermodynamics. We have entropy, which is breaking down systems into less organized forms. But then there's this life. Life is this miraculous thing that moves the other way. Life moves towards greater complexity and organization. And then life sprouts technology, and technology further moves towards complexity and organization. Kevin Kelly, who co-founded Wired magazine, describes technology as an organism. He calls it the technium. He calls it the seventh kingdom of life. And he says that it's subject to the same evolutionary forces as biology. Raymond Kurzweil, in his incredibly evocative book, The Singularity is Near, says that the unique human capacity to create virtual realities in our heads, essentially to imagine, right, combined with our modest-looking thumbs, was sufficient to usher this secondary force of evolution called technology, and how it will continue until the entire universe is at our fingertips. So through this interpretation, we start to see, again, back to my original message, our technology is us, is an extension of our mind, of our will, of our volition, of our agency, and of our desire to overcome our boundaries. See, our neocortex in our brain is a profound advancement in human evolution. Our neocortex allows us to imagine the future, to imagine what doesn't exist yet, and then pull the present forward to meet that possibility. Dubai is a fantastic example of this. Conceived in the mind and brought into existence. David Deutsch, in his book, The Beginning of Infinity, says that if you look at the physical topography of a major city, be it New York or Dubai, that's a physical topography where the forces of mind and intention have trumped geology, so that mind over matter is now a reality. Terence McKenna says that human beings take matter of low organization, it goes through the filters of the mind, and it comes out as an Emirates A380, comes out as a smartphone. It comes out as biotechnology and nanotechnology. Again, we're dealing with atoms, guys. Everything we make is made of atoms, which means it's still part of the physical, natural world. We just reorganize things. That's what the mind does. And out comes more complexity and more organization. We repattern the world. The man-made world is the condensation of human imagination. And this next video is about how nature and tech, again, are one. Please show the next video, patterns.
You know, there's a mind-expanding idea that smashes the false duality between nature and technology. The realization that nature and technology are one and the same, a continuum, smack in the middle between the born and the made, is summed up in the lines, to understand is to perceive patterns. That moment when the dots connect, you see the gestalt, long view, and you see the big picture. This notion of patterns. For example, Paul Stamets has written about the mycelial archetype and how the information sharing systems that comprise the internet, a man-made system, mirror the neurons in our brain, a natural system, which in turn mirror computer models of dark matter in the universe. They all share the exact same intermingled filamental structure. It's unbelievable. Or for example, the fact that forager ants, when they hunt for food, their patterns of hunting mirror the TCP/IP protocols that govern information flow of traffic on the internet. Same patterns. Jeffrey West from the Santa Fe Institute tells us that cities are actually like organisms. They have metabolic rates, and that alleys are like capillaries. Fly an airplane, look at a city from the sky. It looks like a motherboard. It looks like a microchip. Information arranged, evolution, life, sentience, mind. To understand is to perceive these patterns. There is no duality between nature and technology. It is all one and the same.
So, thanks guys. You guys are awesome. So, this is profound knowledge. This is the kind of knowledge that, for me, provided an ontological transformation. It means it transformed how I see the world. My understanding of exponential change, my understanding that technology is an extension of our minds and our creativity, that technology is creativity. That's what technology is. Technology is human creativity in the world. This changed my perspective on things. And then I said to myself, so what's it all for? Because, you can spend hours talking about how magnificent this is, but how are we going to use it for social impact? That's where it really gets exciting. How are we going to make this a better world? How are we going to make ourselves a happier species and all the other species on the planet as well? And people say, well, I think it's very important to tap into your passion, right? That each of us can impact the world in a positive way. Figure out what you want to do, how you're going to use these tools to impact the world in a positive way. How do we get our young people, as we start to disrupt education, which again we heard yesterday Mr. Wagner talk about. Education was designed 100 years ago. It needs to be upgraded. Look, every time I download new versions of my apps on my phone every 2 days, there's always fixes, and there's download the latest version. We need to be doing that for everything. What's the new approach to education? What do the neuroscientists tell us about learning that we need to apply to the classroom? Because now we've tapped into the four forces of learning and creativity: psychology, technology, neurobiology, and pharmacology. We can look underneath the hood of our brain. We have the technology to learn what's going on in there and address the insights to make our systems better, to make education better, to create better feedback loops, to make better people. There was a magnificent article in New York Magazine called "The Psychological Impact of Boring Buildings," where cognitive psychologists were talking about how bad design is actually bad for your health. Badly designed buildings, badly designed offices can make human beings depressed. There's a certain kind of sweet spot for stimuli that we require for learning, or even just for our baseline. And if we don't give people that, people become bored. If they're bored, they become depressed. If they become depressed, it translates in inflammatory effects on our body. So it's actually unhealthy to dwell in badly designed structures. So how can we borrow insights from that for the design of our cities and boulevards and office complexes, if we know there's a profound psychological impact of design and of architecture? This is insightful stuff. And again, for education, for how we learn. So people often ask me, okay, I get very excited about this stuff, but maybe I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know exactly where I should start. And I totally understand this. Not everybody knows what their passion in life is, but maybe they know what they're curious about, at the very least, right? So there was a magnificent article written in Forbes by a very good friend of mine. His name is Stephen Kotler. He's a best-selling author. He co-wrote the book Abundance with Peter Diamandis. And the article was titled, How to Find Your Passion. And I thought, wow, they finally figured it out. And actually, he has a very good formula for those that are wondering, how do you find your passion in the face of so many things to be curious about, so much knowledge to be learned, right? And he says the first thing you want to do is make a list of 10 or more things that you're curious about. Maybe you don't know what your one passion is, but certainly you know what you're curious about. You can be, well, I'm curious about biotech, and I'm curious about human happiness, and I'm curious about math, whatever. Make a list of 10 or more things you're curious about. And then look at your list and see if you can find where 2 or more, maybe 2 or 3 of those 15 things you're curious about, where they overlap. Maybe you have a list of 15, but 3 of them actually overlap. And when those things you're curious about overlap, that's the sweet spot, because that means there's neurobiology happening there. There's dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter in the brain associated with seeking and learning. 3 or more things you're curious about are going to generate a lot of mental activity. So you should be like, whoa, we need to build a curriculum. You need to build a life around those 3 or more things you're curious about overlapping, because that's the pathway to your passion. And then what do you do with that? Well, then you make a list of 10 things in the world that can be served by your passion. Right? So curiosity leads to passion. And then you find a need in the world that can be served by your passion, so then your passion turns into purpose. Easy formula. Curiosity, passion, purpose. And then we get into the social impact. Then you get into like how each of our lives can be made more meaningful by serving humanity in a positive way. So this next video is called How to Find Your Passion. Let's show it, please.
So there was a wonderful article by Stephen Kotler published in Forbes about how to find your passion. It's a question we ask ourselves every single day. We've all been told that a life of passion is a life that means something. But how do we identify our passions? It's not always easy. So one of the things that Stephen Kotler breaks down is that he says that passion essentially exists in the intersection between multiple things that you're curious about. So he says the first thing you should do if you want to identify your passion is to make a list of all the things that you're curious about, all the things that you wonder about. Be as specific as you can. And then create kind of a Venn diagram and try to figure out where the things that you're curious about, 3 or more, intersect. And that's the sweet spot. That's where there is energy. That's where there is dopamine and neurobiology. Multiple streams of curiosity intersect at a space called passion, right? And then once you've identified your passion, then you can figure out how to turn that passion into a purpose. To turn that passion into a purpose, make a list of 15 things in the world, 15 challenges you'd like to see solved. And then figure out which one of those challenges can be served by your passion. So then you see, curiosity leads to passion. Multiple streams of curiosity leads to passion. Identifying problems in the world that can be served by your passion leads to purpose. And then, my friends, you've impregnated your life with a sense of significance, with a sense of meaning. And then you can go forth, my brothers. You can go forth. I thought it was a great article. Take note, Stephen Kotler's work, Flow Genome Project, How to Find Your Passion and Your Flow.
Find your passion, right? So then it gets into the neuroscience of following your passion. Because again, we have now psychology, technology, neurobiology, and pharmacology. We can understand what's going on in our brains when we are connected to something larger than ourselves, with a purpose and passion that lifts our spirits, so to speak. So this led me to develop an interest in what they call states of consciousness north of happy. What happens to the brain beyond happiness? And it turns out there's a name for these states of consciousness. They're called flow states. Now, a flow state is a state of consciousness in which you feel your best and you perform your best. So you feel great and you do great, right? And people who usually tap into passion, the most familiar ones are maybe like an athlete when he's in the zone and he achieves the impossible. Or maybe when a jazz musician, he's like in the pocket and he's improvising and he's like coming up with the most amazing things. I'm sure that Beethoven and Mozart, when they wrote their symphonies, were in a flow state. I know that skydivers and snowboarders, they get into flow states. Writers, sometimes they say they lose themselves and they write their best work ever in a 5-hour stretch. So what's going on when we're in these flow states? What's the neuroscience of human exceptionality, human excellence? And it turns out that flow states are characterized by the following acronym. It's called STIR. STIR stands for selflessness, right? So when you're in flow, your sense of self disappears. It's like they say, you get out of your own way. Your own resistance disappears, your own inner critic disappears, and instead risk-taking goes up, pattern recognition goes up, creativity goes up, lateral thinking goes up, and so you surprise yourself. People say it comes through you but not from you, and though it is with you, it belongs not to you. It's like you get out of your own way. So again, selflessness is a chief characteristic of flow. The other one is timelessness. Your sense of time disappears. When people are in a flow state, they might stay up 12 hours and they don't even get tired because they're so inspired, they're so in their zone. And that's when breakthroughs tend to happen. So selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, a sense that it's just passing through you. You're connected to something larger than yourself. Effortlessness, and finally richness, a sense that what you're doing is real rich in meaning and significance. So these are the chief characteristics of flow states: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and information richness. And there's an organization in Silicon Valley called the Flow Genome Project. They've worked with organizations like Deloitte and Google to try to create systems, design systems that trigger flow states in their employees, right? And what they found is 400% increases in productivity and efficiency among people that are in flow states. 400%. So you have people that achieve more, do more, feel better doing it, are intrinsically motivated, are more creative, can come up with novel solutions to problems, and achieve a 400% increase in output. This is what's made possible by flow states. So again, borrowing from these insights, injecting them into how we do our work and how we teach our kids, hugely important stuff. And I think that when we leverage these insights into technological transformation, when we leverage our passion and learning how to tap into our passion, when we leverage the power of these creative flow states that human beings can put themselves in, then we can move into the true social impact. You might remember last year that I had worked on a digital campaign for a video called Redefine Billionaire. Because one of the things of today is that there's so many opportunities to come up with a piece of software that could change the world. Everybody wants to be like Mark Zuckerberg and become a billionaire. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is cool, but even more inspiring is something that X Prize Foundation has talked about and others, that really the new definition of billionaire, and I absolutely love this, is a billionaire is somebody who positively touches 1 billion people. That's a true billionaire. If you can come up with an idea, if you can make a video, if you can create a company, a software, an app that positively touches 1 billion people, isn't that worth striving for? And some people might say, yeah, I will never achieve that. It's too much to wish for. But it's not. Because from the one takeaway I hope you got from all these exponential technological insights is that the tools are there. The young kid in the middle of rural Africa with a smartphone has better communications technology than a US president had 25 years ago. So the supercomputer to change the world, the magic wand, the magic mirror, that you rub the magic mirror and all the world's knowledge and information is right there for you. A miracle of engineering, now in everybody's hands. So you have the tool. You tap into your passion, you tap into your flow, right? Maybe you live in a city like Dubai that celebrates innovation and thinking big, and you can do anything. You can be a billionaire, according to this new definition. So let's celebrate that idea. Please show the next video, Redefine Billionaire. Captains of Spaceship Earth. Thank you.
We live in a world of exponential technological advancement. What this literally means is that we have new construction kits for our reality, new tools with which to probe at the adjacent possible. So consider the implications, right? As Marshall McLuhan used to say, first we build the tools, and then the tools build us. We are designed by what we have designed. There are these feedback loops of mind, tool, and world that radically redefine our boundaries, that radically transform what it means to be human. To be human today is to crisscross the sky. To be human today is to create technosocial wormholes, mind-to-mind communication, to overcome the limits of time, space, and distance. And so what do? Well, we need to radically reach out to one another in ways that we haven't before. There's a great line that says empathy really extends beyond our line of sight. In other words, it's out of sight, it is out of mind. But if anything, these wireless communication technologies are radically extending our line of sight. They're providing new ontological maps of the real. They're giving us the astronaut overview effect. We are seeing the big picture. We are seeing that we are the captains of Spaceship Earth. And what shall we do? We need to extend our hands to one another. We've never had such tools to overcome all of the limitations of our humanity. We have the power, we have the will, we have the capacity, the creative capacity capacity to overcome our limits. And so today, billions of us linking to one another, creating a global node, a global brain. What is the new definition of billionaire? The new definition of billionaire is he who will positively affect the lives of a billion people. He or she who will reach out and say, I will positively affect the lives of a billion people. This should be our goal. This is our responsibility. Here's our chance.
Here's our chance, right? We can all be the billionaires. So, I call my videos shots of awe. And awe is a word that you can use interchangeably with wonder or with really intense curiosity. Maybe the child who first looks through a microscope and he sees that universe in a grain of sand, or heaven in a wild flower, or holding infinity in the palm of your hand, or eternity in an hour, as Blake wrote. So that sense of awe, that experience of such perceptual expansion, that you have to remake your mental maps of the world in order to make sense of the experience, like staring at the universe through a telescope for the first time. That curiosity, that awe also has really positive neuroscientific impact and benefits. And it turns out that experiences of awe and intense curiosity fuel our thirst for knowledge. They increase our creativity, they increase our empathy, so our sense of connection with our fellow human beings. They increase our compassion. So in addition to being the fuel for the thirst for knowledge, these experiences of wonder and awe also make us nicer people, and they reduce inflammation, right? They release a cocktail of chemicals in our brains that act as anti-inflammatory in our bodies. So blowing our own minds once in a while is actually really, really healthy. That's why whenever I visit Dubai, I like to go to the Burj Khalifa, because I experience such awe when I stare at that building. I mean, it's incredible. That feeling is good for our souls. So that's why I call my videos shots of awe. That's where the science comes from. So to kind of recap what we talked about today, we're here at the Knowledge Summit, right? We're looking at all these rapid changes. So innovation, creativity, and technology, yes, we get it. It's changing fast. Sometimes it's scary, but the attitude should be, yes, we can leverage these tools to make a positive impact on the world. The response to rapid technological change is not fear. It should be forums and conversations about how we can use these tools to make this a better world. Tech. Then we've got passion, right? Then we've got creative flow states and designing spaces and places for people to tap into their zone so they can achieve more knowledge. And then, of course, we have awe, curiosity, and social impact. We can redefine the term billionaire. We can all be billionaires and impact the world in a positive way. So to me, this conference is a celebration of adventure of the mind, adventures of the mind and body, adventure, science, and exploration, that human desire to explore. And these are the hallmarks of the organization I work with. National Geographic is a brand that stands for these principles of adventure, science, and exploration. And I'm doing a new television series with National Geographic called Origins. The history of mankind, the journey of mankind. And Origins will be an 8-episode series about knowledge and about the acquisition of knowledge that changed humanity. The origins of tool making, the origins of transportation, from the wheel to the Airbus A380, okay? The origins of what has made us human. And that show should premiere next March in National Geographic. So in closing, and before we open the Q&A, I want to show you a final video on this overarching theme of adventure, science, and exploration. Because, my friends, a sense of adventure should be our guiding light. A sense of adventure should be our North Star. And so I'll leave you with this video, and I want to thank you for hosting me again. I love visiting Dubai. And please, let's show the next video, Adventure, Science, and Exploration.
What does it mean to explore? What does it mean to adventure? Walker Percy wrote, "The search is what anyone would undertake if he were not sunk in the everydayness of his own life. To be aware of the possibility of the search is to be onto something. Not to be onto something is to be in despair." The search, you see, is existential. Exploration, science, and adventure is how we search, not just for answers, but for better questions. It's how we rage against the darkness, how we battle against ignorance, make inroads against dogma. Exploration is how we map the world. Science is how we come to understand it. Adventure is how we come alive. These are our tools against meaninglessness. Adventure, science, and exploration put men on the moon, built marvelous jetliners, immersed us in virtual realities, and helps us make sense of the world. Technological marvels extend our imaginative capacities and help us overcome all of our limits. As the poet Yeats wrote, "The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper." And grown sharper they have. Through the scientific process, we've expanded our minds by building instruments such as microscopes and telescopes that pierce the micro and the macro, engorging our perspectives, and in doing so, blasting new tunnels between the mind and the other. We satiate our curiosities by getting outside ourselves, beside ourselves, creating cognitive appendages and new toolkits for the mind, taking us to spaces and places beyond mind, world, and wonderment. Adventure is about expanding our minds. The outer journey is the inner journey. We seek to expand the boundaries of our humanness, the repository of our knowledge, to become more than what we are. And as poet, author Marina Benjamin wrote, what the space age has been seeking all along was not so much an expansion of physical space as an expansion of mind. When we dream of space, she wrote, we dream of transcendence. We dream of what we might become.
Thank you so much, guys. Great to be here with you guys. Thank you. Thanks so much. So I believe there's a Q&A if there's some time left, so happy to answer any questions. And I'm sure that they'll give you mics or something, but yeah. There's a mic over there, so follow her. Raise your hand so she can see you. Yeah, cool.
Hey, Jason.
Hi.
Nice to see you here.
Thanks.
Okay, so technology is really freaking awesome, right? But
Yeah.
I just got back from the Wired Festival, where one man gave a presentation of a report he did on artificial intelligence. And basically, within the foreseeable future, all of us are going to be out of jobs because robots are really going to replace us. So what do you think about our relationship with technology in that way? Is there any way that we can kind of avoid us becoming secondary to robots, basically?
Yeah, I don't think that we'll become secondary, but I think that our values about how we fill our time might change, right? The old definition of jobs, which is, cogs in the machine, you just put a human being to fill the time to run the Industrial Revolution. I mean, these are not necessarily the most meaningful ways to fill our time. They're just placeholders so we can make money and fund our lives and keep the machine moving. There's a philosopher, I think is Douglas Rushkoff, wrote an article in CNN called The End of Work. And he says, so if the jobs are done by the robots, the jobs that nobody wants to do anyway, what are we going to do with ourselves? Well, there's a lot of interesting ideas about universal basic income that maybe we want to start thinking about. I think that with the level of advancements of the modern world and society, I think that we should be able to take care of one another. I think homeless people on the streets of a city like Manhattan is kind of absurd and unacceptable and morally very sad that we have such wealth and that we still permit people sleeping on the streets when we have the resources to fix that. 100 years ago in the US, 80% of the workforce was farmers. Today it's less than 1% of the workforce, but produces 1,000 times the yield. People found other things to do with their time. I'm sure that there will be new roles for people to fill, but I also think that a lot of creative people instead of doing a job they don't like, maybe they're going to live inside a virtual reality and they're going to design exquisite universes, and maybe that'll be a job. Maybe there'll be new jobs. Who wants to design a virtual universe and then you sell people access to it? And there'll be a Picasso and a Beethoven that make beautiful virtual worlds, and we'll pay like a ticket, a first-class ticket to visit this guy's virtual world, There's going to be new Leonardo da Vinci's, new artists that are going to be working with new tools. Maybe we'll have robots that can do stuff with biotech, but we'll still want the human touch, that artistic touch that human beings bring to the table. But, if people need to fill their life with a job just to occupy their time, then we need to have a larger philosophical conversation about what it means to be a human being when our basic needs are met by machines. Maybe we all become philosophers. I don't have the answer, but these are some of my questions to keep asking. So, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
You actually clear my fear that we are being driven by technology only, and knowledge is quite wider than technology alone. And I think you corrected the balance over the past 2 days, that knowledge is actually the creation of human thinking, and it is the driving force for everything, including that little part which is technology.
Yes.
I thank you for the presentation, and I have no question. You clear everything.
Well, I thank you. Thank you. That's a beautiful comment. Thank you. Awesome.
Hi, Jason. I'm here. In the middle.
In the middle, great, super.
Hi, my name is Aliyah. First of all, thank you for your passion and being in the flow.
Thanks.
So I do truly believe that our emotions and reactions of humanity, of all humans, is a program. It's just downloaded. We don't feel anything new. We all pass through the same anger, love, kindness, whatever. So, and if we get lost in that, we suffer. So my question to you, you're still a human, right? So,
yes. So
when
far.
you go through your kind of suffering, how do you personally deal with that by using your body and mind without technologies?
How do I deal with emotions?
Yes. In your own life.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's very interesting. I think that because human beings are symbolic creatures, we live in a linguistic construct. The world of humans is a symbolic reality that's on top of our physical reality. An example of that is our name as an identity, clothing that we ascribe meaning to, culture. Culture is a virtual reality. It doesn't make it any less real. In fact, you shouldn't call it virtual reality, you should call it a reality of the virtual. But language, culture, identity, interpersonal relationships, the sense of shared meaning that brings us together, that allows us to collaborate to build the world, these are all virtual realities. They're linguistic constructs. Terence McKenna used to say the world is made of language. And if you know the words the world is made of, you can make of it whatever you wish. So if you think of words not as descriptive of reality, but words as generative, right? Words become worlds. So we are linguistic creatures. But sometimes this capacity betrays us. I have dealt, for example, with anxiety. So that's been a struggle for me. I'm kind of a control freak, and when I can't control things, fear kicks in. I grew up in Venezuela, is a very failed country. There's crime and instability, and it's a really difficult place, right? And so, I grew up with fear of home invasions, fear of violence against my family. These are things, legitimate fears, but then those become patterns in your brain. Your amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, gets overstimulated. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. So then, even when you're safe, you sometimes will feel fear, and you don't know where to put that fear. And instead of being able to say, well, this is just an emotion, with no bearing in reality, the symbolic world will overcome. So it'll create fear when there's no need to be fearful, right? And I remember once I was having a conversation with a neuroscientist friend of mine, and he says, well, maybe sometimes, you know how they say sometimes a cigar is just a cigar? Well, sometimes anxiety is just a peculiar feeling, like an itch. You have an itch, you scratch it, you don't overthink it. And sometimes anxiety is just a physiological discomfort. Maybe you ate something you didn't like, and it's making your stomach tense. And then your mind is saying, something's wrong, I need to go to the doctor. Maybe no. Maybe you just say, okay, mind, I love you for allowing me to create worlds. Right now, this is just a physical sensation, not a big problem. So you have to make friends with your mind, because our gifts can also be our curses. Thank you. Okay, guys, so it turns out we're out of time, but I will see you guys later. Thank you so much.